Thank you, Cancora. Instead of a motion of mandatory open disclosure, I think a more fitting would have been a motion of no confidence in the government itself. I don't believe that addressing mandatory disclosure will change anything so long as we have Fine Gael in power with Fianna Fáil in support, or vice versa. In fact, we will continue to see scandal after scandal so long as the two establishment parties continue to play musical chairs across the chamber. After all the competitive outrage between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael in recent weeks on the CervicalCheck scandal, we are still no closer to holding those responsible to account. The reason why no one has been held to account is because those responsible are in a partnership for government. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have engaged in a disingenuous exchange blaming so-called HSE culture, a convenient culprit with no individual to blame. The refusal to call for Tony O'Brien's resignation was an attempt to save face. Better that someone else takes the blame so that ministers won't be held to account instead. And the partners in government, including the Independent Alliance and indeed Labour in the previous government, and other parties have also failed to hold the establishment parties to account for their outright failure to deliver for women in this country. What's been played out here in the Dáil is disingenuous when we consider how Fianna Fáil nearly brought down the government over a bunch of emails from the Department of Justice, yet they recoil when asked if the death of women in this instance would lead them to do the same. We are at risk of becoming a parody of ourselves if we haven't already done so. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael both jointly and separately shaped the health system that we have today and are therefore wholly responsible for the inadequacies and failing on women in this state. As authors of our monolithic health service, the two main political parties have facilitated the increasing privatisation of health provision across this country, radically moving away from the notion of healthcare as a right. In fact, since the establishment of this state, we have never had a public healthcare system. Even in the post-World War Europe, while other countries developed theirs, Ireland had the Catholic Church in control of our nation's health and pushing aside notions of free and accessible healthcare, viewing this as an interference in family life. Fianna Fáil, alongside the Progressive Democrats, invented the two-tier health system, while Fine Gael have explicitly pushed the HSE towards a private enterprise model. The bottom line will become the sole motivation of health chiefs. Healthcare provision is ultimately be compromised as a system is owned and run by special interest groups intent on maximum profit. Successive governments have also been keen to treat our public health system like a private entity, incorporating management systems which view individuals as statistics and not in human terms. Outsourcing is another sign of encroaching privatisation of our health service. Outsourcing is essentially transferring control and accountability to the private sector organisations. The HSE chose to avail of laboratories outside the state, despite concerns regarding the preservation of quality control across two jurisdictions. If we keep the same parties in government, we will only see more and more outsourcing of essential services, when we really need to move towards a publicly controlled and universally accessible single-tier national health service. We need to view healthcare as a fundamental right. Twice I introduced a bill to enshrine economic, social and cultural rights in our constitution, including the right to healthcare, and twice Fine Gael voted it down while Fianna Fáil abstained. It's clear we will never develop a rights-based approach so long as the two establishment parties are in power. It's no coincidence that these systematic failures have happened on the grounds of women's healthcare, whether it's the death of women under the 8th Amendment, countless women undergone some physiotomies, the needless death of newborns in Portlaoise Hospital, or today with CervicalCheck. Male chauvinism has been a persistent feature of the HSE and government. Women outside these chamber walls are sick of seeing crocodile tears and listening to male politicians verbally dissecting their bodies and again for political gain. Women do not need a scapegoat. They need an alternative to this current government. A government who can provide an adequate health service that meets the needs of women in this country and hold itself to account.